Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of For Checking TV. I'm your co-host Doug Glacky, and alongside me is my co-host Scotty Porterfield. Scotty, how we doing?
Ooh, day one of free agency has come and gone, and what a chaotic one it was. We got a lot of moving pieces going around. Some teams made some huge upgrades, some teams didn't do jack shit, basically. So it's going to be a very interesting look heading into the new season, but that's why we're here. We're here to go over some of the stuff that happened because it was a very busy day, and we're going to see a lot of new faces playing in some different spots. So let's get into it.
Definitely. What a free agency to go out on for cap friendly as the league spent over $1.2 billion yesterday on free agents, which is obviously a byproduct of the cap inflation. Cap hasn't gone up like this much since the pandemic started. So, you know, everybody is very much into like wanting to spend money and try and make their team better through free agency. So, starting us off, the Nashville Predators, in terms of the splash moves, they won the day, man. They went and got Steven Stamkos eight or for 4 years, $8 million per. That's gonna be a huge upgrade for them. They went and got Marchessault, 5 years, 5.5 million. Interesting tidbit with this was the only reason Marchessault went was because Stamkos texted him. And I feel
Hmm.
like that's such an interesting footnote in like recent hockey history is Jonathan Marchessault came up as one of those Tampa kids.
That's right. Yeah.
And he was never able to fully crack there. So he ended up in Florida for a little bit. And then obviously Vegas came and went, and that's where he established himself as a star player in this league. Um, so they're boys. I would expect them both to slot in on the second line with whomever centering them, whether it be Cody Glass or Tommy Novak. Both great options for both of for them. And they went and signed Brady Shea. I love Brady Shea, but 7x7 is a very bizarre number for Brady Shea. Um, but that's just a byproduct of what the market was yesterday. And,
Yeah.
we're going to see a lot more of that, especially once we get to Seattle, because that was a lot of money handed out to two very interesting players.
Mhm.
They got Scott Wedgwood to back up UC Saros, which pretty much confirms what what I believe at least of they're going to move Yaroslav Askarov.
Mhm.
Um, they're going to try and get somebody that can help them now. I'm not really sure how they're going to go about that. Obviously, they're going to have to find somebody on an entry level contract of a similar ilk and you know go for it in that way. They also brought back Alexander Carrier, 3 years, 375 AAV. That's a good defenseman for them. He's usually a good second pairing option for them. And then I don't think we touched on it yesterday, so I'm gonna bring it back up. They re-signed UC Saros to an 8 year deal at a 7.74 cap hit. Um, I like this for them, but like at the same time, like I feel like the money could have been allocated elsewhere. I understand that they like Saros, but like you have a goaltender down at the AHL level who is of a similar mold, if not could end up being better than Saros. So you could have went with him for like 925 for the next 2 years and had more money to build beyond what they've already built. Because like let's be real, this team reminds me of they're basically the Bruins of the Western Conference. You know, bunch of good defensemen and a top six group that is great, but then you look down and the bottom six is just a bunch of random guys.
Essentially, yeah. I mean, just the fact they're able to get in Stamkos and March so just to really shore up that second line. That's a huge move for those guys. I mean, it's going to be weird not seeing Steven Stamkos in Tampa Bay. I mean, you figure everything he gave to that franchise and all that he did, it's going to take a little bit of adjusting to get used to. But again, great move overall by Nashville, bringing in Shea as well. I don't mind the contract with Shea. I think he's still going to be a very serviceable defenseman as time moves along. And shoring up Carrier and Saros as well. Saros has proven that he should be the guy in Nashville. I think he's earned the right to get that contract, and I think that's what Nashville's thinking too. Is that hey, we have a guy who had to fill in the shoes of Pekka Rinne, which was pretty big to fill, and he did just that and more. So I think Nashville's making all the right moves right now. You can tell that they're not satisfied with how last year ended. They want to make another run at it, and I think they've reloaded and gotten some great pieces. So I think they're going to be set for a huge season coming up.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel like this is a team that can be just an absolute problem moving forward, going into like years beyond this. I think this week pretty much proved that Barry Trotz is a great GM. Um, I wasn't sure how he was going to adapt to that role, but he took it and he's running with it. Um, it's going to be interesting to see how this cap situation goes for them. They've never really spent to the ceiling before. That's something that they never really did under David Poyle. So, cross reference here, it's almost like with the Steelers when Kevin Colbert retired and then and they promoted Omar Khan. It's like the Steeler way is dead. You know what I'm saying? So
Sort of,
it's
yeah.
going to be an interesting change of pace for them, because they're going to have to sign Gustav Nyquist this offseason or like next summer. So that's gonna be a big one for them to try and do because he just randomly popped off for 74 points last year. You know,
Thank you, Philip.
um, I was gonna say like that's the first thing I thought whenever I was looking at their depth charts and I saw the points total. I was like, holy crap, he just went off with Forsberg. Moving
Yeah.
forward, San Jose made a couple interesting moves. They went and got some good veteran talent to go with that young group they have. Obviously, I think the goal is for them to try and sway Macklin Celebrini into going pro this year and not going back to BU. So they went and got Tyler Toffoli to go play with them. They also signed Alexander Wenberg to a 2-year deal at a 5 million AAV, and the AAV on Toffoli is 4 years, 6 million per. Um, this is a team that's going to have an interesting top six. For Sharks fans, it's going to be fun to watch this year, especially if Macklin Celebrini does go pro. Um, there's also rumors going around that they're trying to get Joe Pavelski into the organization in some capacity, whether that is trying to sway him out of retirement to mentor Celebrini or be like a special advisor, kind of like what they're doing with Joe Thornton.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, when you have a player of that caliber, you want to get him going as soon as you can. You don't want to risk him going back to BU. And then, I mean, at that point, anything can happen. If he blows a knee or something in college and can't really help you out anymore, that's going to be devastating for San Jose. So I think that obviously the goal is, hey, let's get him in the NHL as quick as we can. How do we do that? Well, let's get him a complimentary piece in Tyler Toffoli. Guys want to guys his name on the cup. He's a reliable player, and same goes for Wenberg. I think that San Jose is trying to get the ball rolling there. I mean, obviously they're not going to be a playoff team yet this year, but I think you want to establish at least, hey, we are going to be a team that's going to be hard to reckon with here in a couple of years.
Yeah, definitely. And with the Wenberg contract, you know, it's a harmless 2-year deal. That's going to be a free that's going to be a free pick for them at the deadline this year or next. It's probably a free first or second round pick. Um, so good on them for doing that good piece of business and getting both those guys. Columbus didn't really do anything super crazy. They signed Sean Monahan um, to bring him in to most likely play with Johnny Gaudreau. It's 5 years, 5.5 million. Um, lines up with the end of Johnny Gaudreau's contract there in Columbus. I think a lot of what Don Waddell, I almost said Don Sweeney, Don Waddell is trying to do is try and make Johnny Gaudreau as comfortable as possible to get him back to playing his game. Um, obviously, perception is in the hands of whoever wants to like talk about it, but things have gone horribly in Columbus since Gaudreau signed there. And it's not Gaudreau's fault. A lot of that falls on Jarmo Kekalainen and then Pascal Vincent. Pascal Vincent was not a good NHL coach at all. And then like went with the whole, Mike Babcock situation. Again, that's on Yarmo for thinking that it would be a great idea to bring that guy back into the fold. Um, but this is going to be an interesting team on paper. Caden Lindstrom could potentially make it to the NHL this year. I wouldn't be surprised. I think out of all the guys outside of Celebrini, he looks like the one who might be the most like mature enough from a physical and mental standpoint to make that jump. So they could have an interesting forward group this year. Obviously, the defense kind of is what it is. I mean, they still have Eric Goodbranson on the books for 2 more years. And then their defense is probably going to consist of a lot of prospects. They'll have Jiricek, Denton Mateychuk, Stanislav Svozil. They'll all probably get time throughout the year. But really, just the takeaway was Monahan and Gaudreau together back again in Columbus. I think that's a good move for them. And what makes it even more underrated is it forces Boone Jenner to the wing.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, when like you said already, just reuniting Monahan and Goudreau, obviously that's huge for them. Obviously, they had great chemistry back in their Calgary days, so it's good to see those two playing again. And as much as I look at Columbus as one of Pittsburgh's biggest rivals in the division, I do want to see that team, kind of get back to form again.
Mm-hmm.
It's a shame
Mm-hmm.
things have taken a turn as badly as they have. I mean, it seems like Patrick Laine is going to be out the door again. It doesn't seem like he's going to be sticking around in Columbus. So they still have a lot of work to do, obviously, and I hope that they get their stuff together sooner rather than later because it's going to be another long season if they don't. And you just hope that eventually they'll figure things out before it's too late.
Yeah. My thing with Line A is I'm curious to see where he ends up. I was thinking that he might potentially end up in Pittsburgh, but after yesterday, and obviously we'll get into that at some point, we're probably going to do that one last before we get into some small housekeeping stuff because that's going to be the one that I think you and I go on the longest about is I thought that Pittsburgh would be a good match. But other than that, I'm not really sure who could really acquire Line. I know that he's probably negative value at this point, and he'd have to go to a team that has cap space, and would get enticed with a pick. Somebody that comes to mind right away is the Ducks.
Hmm.
The Ducks could do it quite literally because it's an 8.7 cap hit. They can stomach the entire cap hit, and his entire hit gets them to the cap floor.
Wow.
So that could be interesting. Not really sure how good of a match that would be, but like I would watch for them. I'd also watch for Minnesota as well. I heard that Minnesota had interest in him going into the draft, so that's going to be something to look forward to. Moving onward, though, the Boston Bruins had a pretty non-eventful or somewhat eventful free agency day. You know, they got Elias Lindholm for 7 years at 7.75. That fills a center void that they so desperately needed. Um, not really gonna say that like obviously your first thought's probably if Stamkos is making 8, why didn't they just go get Stamkos? But like Lindholm fits more of how they play, in my opinion. Yeah, he's able to play that physical run and gun style of hockey that they play out in over in Boston. And on top of that, they also signed Max Jones to a 2-year deal at a 1 million AAV. I like this signing a lot for them. I think that that's a really, really good bottom six option for them. And it would allow them, it gives them more flexibility as somebody who can move up and down in the lineup as needed because Max Jones did a lot of that whenever he was healthy with the Ducks. As well as they got Nikita Zadorov yesterday for their defense. I think that's a good ad for them. Um, 6 years, $5 million AAV, and what makes it even more like what makes that signing even more awesome is he just came out right away and was said, "Do not ever call me Big Z ever again." That's for Zdeno Chara.
That's perfect.
Yeah,
I mean, I mean, that's great because I mean, there will obviously never be another Zdeno Chara in this league, but I mean, when you think of the way Nikita Zadorov plays with the physical side of his game, he is a perfect fit for the Boston Bruins. I mean, that is literally what they that is literally when you think of Boston Bruins, you think of big players, a lot of physicality, and that is Nikita Zadorov 10 like right on the dot. And as far as Lindholm is concerned, another great fit up the middle. Again, and you said compare him to Stamkos. He's also younger than Stamkos too, so he's still going to be very serviceable for the team. He's still in the prime of his career. I think these are two, again, Boston wasn't very active, but these are two very important signs that they made that's, hopefully going to get things going for them. Obviously, I know the fans in Beantown are getting restless right now, not having the
yeah,
Stanley Cup in this decade yet, or just in the last 10 years or so. So I'm sure that this is a step in the right direction for them to try and get back there.
yeah. Obviously, something to watch for throughout the summer is still need to sign Jeremy Swayman. Um, that's looking like it might come in at a 8x8. So look for that to be something that comes down the pipe here somewhat soon. Moving onward, probably the best free agency day out of anybody in terms of getting actual value. Um, the Edmonton Oilers. They did a lot of good business yesterday. Their interim GM Jeff Jackson locked in and got after it, man. They got Jeff Skinner for 1 year, 3 million. Victor Arvidsson 2 years, 4 million. They brought back Yanmark and Connor Brown, both on cheap deals. Connor Brown's 1 year, 1 million, and then Yanmark is 3 years at 1.45. They also got Josh Brown for 3 years at $1 million per, and Troy Stetcher at 2 years at 787. Um, that's Oh, and I completely forgot. They also brought back Adam Henrique, 2 year deal at 3 million AAV. This might, honest to God, end up being the best forward core that Connor McDavid has ever had. Um, the entire narrative of Leon Draisaitl never has wingers is now no longer going to be the case because odds are they're going to run Nugent Hopkins, McDavid, Hyman, and then they're going to run Skinner, Draisaitl, Arvidsson with I mean, their third lines probably end up being like Henrique, McLeod, and Dylan Holloway, which is great. Or, part of me thinks that they go like a four center system with Henrique on the third and McLeod on the fourth. Like that team's going to be loaded. And honestly, right now, I think that this specifically if they get good goaltending, like if Stu Skinner goes back to form and does what he did this year at times in the playoffs on a consistent basis, they are probably my odds on favorite to win the cup next year.
Definitely. I mean, you look at how this year went for them. You were one win away from the cup. You could tell they know, hey, it's right there. We just need to shore things up a little bit. We just need to make our team a little bit better. That's exactly what they do. You bring back those key depth pieces in Henrique, Janmark, and Connor Brown. You get Josh Brown and Stetcher as well. Then, of course, bringing in Jeff Skinner and Victor Arvidsson to shore up your top six. Perfect moves all around by Edmonton. Now it's just a matter of, hey, whenever it's time to drop the puck in October, we do what it takes to get our team back to the playoffs and then back to the Stanley Cup final. So kudos to Edmonton for at least fielding a good team and putting a good team together. Like you said, Dougie, this is definitely without question Connor McDavid's most complete team that he's had now, and I'm looking forward to seeing how he and the Oilers do next season.
Yeah. And another thing to potentially take into account, not that I think that they would ever do it, is if it ever came down to it, they have the wingers in place to go McDavid, Draisaitl, Nugent Hopkins down the middle.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're going up against that, good luck to you because there's no coming back from that.
Yeah, have fun with that.
Moving on, we're going to talk Seattle real quick. Two very questionable contracts in terms of like the length and the AAV. Chandler Stevenson got a 7-year deal at 6.25 per. I like Chandler Stevenson as a player, don't get me wrong. But the problem for me is as it sits right now, there's 1 to 2 too many mouths to be fed in Seattle. They don't have a clear spot in place for Shane Wright. And that's something that, in my opinion, needs to happen. I've watched a lot of Shane Wright at the AHL level over the past 2 years, and I think that he's ready to make that jump. I think that, he needs to be your second or third line center. And as it sits right now, it's looking like he may pencil in as your fourth line center, if not barely playing at all. Which,
Yeah.
with that being your fourth overall pick in the draft 2 years ago, you need to find a way to make him a factor in your lineup because the talent is there. I believe that Dan Bylsma will be able to properly coach him and develop him because he's already been coaching him at Coachella Valley the past 2 years. And I think a lot of it was a byproduct of Dave Hackstall being bad with young players. We saw that in Philadelphia a lot with how he was with like Konechny and all those guys. But they need to find a spot for Shane Wright at the NHL level.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you spent a fourth overall pick on a guy, you better be able to work
Right.
him into your lineup in some form or fashion. But going back to the signings that Seattle made with Stevenson and Brandon Montour as well, I think Seattle realized they took a step back last year, and obviously,
Mhm.
they need to reassess the team. And I think that's a step in the right direction by bringing in those two guys and trying to get them back to playoff form because Seattle's definitely a tough team to play against, but it just felt like they didn't have that last year. They did in they didn't like they did in 2023. So I think it's going to be huge for them to bring in a guy like Stevenson. Again, that term is a little questionable, but I think if you're trying to, return to the promised land again, you got to have a guy like Chandler Stevenson on your team.
I agree, and the biggest thing for them is they needed to upgrade the defense because with their goaltending situation being what it is, with Grubauer not being as good as he was supposed to be at the time of his signing, they need the defense to be as solid as can be. Right now it looks like they're going to run Dunn, Montour, Dumoulin, Larson, and then Alexiak and Will Borgen with their rookie Riker Evans being the 7 or rotating in. I think that's okay. I think that's good enough for them. Um, you know, and they might trade somebody to try and shed some cap space this year. They might try and move Burakovsky or Bjorkstrand out or somebody that's closer to UFA or closer to free agency, just due to the fact that they have $9.2 million left to work with this year. And I would be certain that most of that's going to go towards a long-term deal with Matty Beniers.
Yeah,
You know,
definitely.
yeah.
I think Seattle's just trying to, shore up that young core as well. You have Beniers. again, hopefully Danny Bylsma can figure out how to get Shane Wright, going and making him a serviceable NHL player, because that's not a guy you should be giving fourth line minutes to. And I think that, with enough time and tutelage, he'll be able to be what Seattle needs him to be and what they set out for him to be whenever they drafted him a couple of years back.
Definitely, definitely. Now we're gonna move to Carolina. Um, they did a lot of interesting work yesterday. Obviously, um they lost Brady Shea, they lost Brett Pesci, and they lost Stefan Nazen. So Eric Tulsky went out and pretty much replaced those guys with players that are similar to them. So he went and signed Sean Walker to a, oh wow, this contract's actually awesome. 5-year deal at 3.6 million AAV. And then he got Shane Goss's bear at 3.2 for 3 years. As well as getting Will Carrier on a long-term 6-year deal at $2 million per. I don't like handing out those contracts like that to bottom six players. But like if I were going to go hand out a contract like that to bottom six player, I would have probably given it to Will Carrier.
Carolina is definitely in win now mode, and I think they're starting to look at it. I think they're starting to get a little frustrated now too, because for whatever reason they're not able to get over the hump and get to the Stanley Cup final. Never mind, just it's just you're trying to figure out how they keep missing it, and they're just trying to find the right pieces to get it done. Will Carrier is definitely a guy that can do that. He seems like a Rod Brindamore type of player, so
Yes.
to have him in your bottom six is good. And obviously, Brandon Walker for that term is incredible. Goss's Bear will sure up the defensive core as well. And then, of course, what we also didn't mention yet, bringing back Jordan Martinook. Obviously, everybody knows how huge he is in that Carolina locker room. So it's good to have him sticking around as well, because I think that is a key guy that they need on that team.
Yeah. And another big one is Jacob Slavin got extended yesterday. He got an 8-year deal, and the AAV is going to come in at just under 6.5 million. That's like a 1.1 to 1.2 million dollar raise for him, which just goes to show you how much he loves Carolina.
Yeah,
You know,
literally. I mean, yeah, he wants to be here, and he and Carolina is a place to play right now. I mean, that's definitely he loves
yeah,
playing for Rod Brindamore, and he wants to stick around and make something happen down in Raleigh. So I think that was a good move on his part.
yeah. And I'm sure that he's probably the next captain there once Jordan Stahl retires. So
Mhm.
that's
Easily.
definitely. Detroit, real quick. Um, Obviously, we said yesterday that they brought Patrick Kane back on a 1-year deal at 4 million. But beyond that, really nothing else too crazy. They brought in Christian Fisher on a 1-year deal. That's going to be an interesting add for the bottom six. And then they signed Eric Gustafson for 2 years at 2 million. That's a good defenseman for them. And then they brought in William Lagesson for a 1-year deal at league minimum. They still need to sign Moritz Seider, Lucas Raymond, and Joe Valeno. And as of right now, dude, they have 4 goalies. They have 4 goalies on their roster and it's quite literally just a barbershop quartet of like mid goaltending. Because you got Billy Huso, they signed Cam Talbot for 2 years, Alex Lyon at 900K, and then Jack Campbell at league minimum. Um, and like that's the thing is like you're gonna have to send two of these guys through one or two of these guys through waivers, and it's honestly irresponsible to send two of them through waivers because you want to give Sebastian Kosa playing time in Grand Rapids because that's your goalie of the future.
Definitely. I mean, looking at looking at that goaltending setup they got going on down there, nobody really stands out as, hey, this could be a clear-cut starter. I
Right.
feel like, and you can't even call it a 1A, 1B type of deal, because
No.
They're not that good. It's more like 1C, 1D. Like that's
Yeah.
really all they have right now. So I mean, it's going to be very interesting to see how Detroit handles that. I'm a little surprised Stevie wasn't a little more active this year in free agency, especially considering the fact that your team just missed the postseason last year. I figured he would have been looking for, maybe a new piece or two that could have really short things up. But I also understand, hey, you got a young core that you need to lock in for a long term. So I kind of get where he's coming from. It's just a little surprising. That's how the route Detroit went, was getting the goaltending, but that was their goaltending that they went with.
Well, I also think that he got held up a little bit because of they were in on Truba.
Mm.
I think that that held them up a little bit because, like, the second day of the draft, there was already framework agreed upon that he was going to go there for at like 2 million, at like 2 million retained every year till the end of the contract, but then he exercises no movement clause and no trade clause. So yeah, but anyways, LA Kings, bad, bad July 1st for them. They cleared all that money with moving out PLD, and they went and blew it on a 4-year deal with Joel Edmondson at 3.85 million AAV. Not a good defenseman, not good. Warren Fogel's an interesting signing for them. 3 years, 3.5 million AAV. He put up a bunch of points with the Oilers last year, playing primarily with Leon Draisaitl. He's an interesting get for them. I think that he's a good middle six option for them. But the main story right now is they have $10.7 million in cap space, and they got to figure out a long-term deal or at least a bridge deal with Quentin Byfield, and they need to bring back Jordan Spence. So that's gonna be tight, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, Byfield's proven that he's going to be a commodity for your team now, so he's going to need to be paid as such. But like you said, LA was with a very underwhelming first day of free agency. Edmondson's not going to be a difference maker, and I guess Fogel will help your depth obviously with his scoring. With he's able to score a little bit too, so he'll give you some third line, fourth line scoring depending on where they play him. But yeah, for a team that is trying to turn things back around and seems like they were on the right path. This was a bit of a step backwards. I don't think they really made the right moves, or just any moves in general, to really get the team where they need to be and make them a bigger contender out west.
Yeah, I agree. And a lot of it, I mean, unfortunately, a lot of it does lie on the shoulders of Darcy Kemper.
Mm-hmm.
Like if he's able to get back to form and where he was paired with that defense, he might be like they might be able to go on a run a little bit. Obviously, they have a lot of young prospects and they have a good little farm system going down there. But a lot of that is yet to be seen. How that's going to go. And as for Byfield, if they don't give him 8 years, they're going to regret it. Like they need to lock him in for the full 8.
He needs a long-term deal. That's not someone you want to throw a bridge deal at right now. You want him locked up long-term,
No, most
easily.
definitely. Most definitely. Moving on to the Maple Leafs. Not really sure what to think of what they did yesterday. Obviously, like I said in our last recording, Chris Tanev got that 6-year deal at 4.5. And then they signed Oliver Ekman Larson to a 4-year deal at $3.5 million AAV. They also signed Anthony Stolarz. That's a good 1B option for them. Obviously they had the luxury of giving him more money than they typically give to a goaltender. Um, with Joe Wool still being on a very low contract for right now. Obviously, he got extended starting next year. It'll be a 3-year deal at a 3.66. This team, like, they just they are what they are. their group, like their elite core will get them to the playoffs every time. But other than that, like I don't really know what to think of them. They spent above the cap again. They're $794,000 over the cap, and they still need to sign Connor Dewar and try and figure out what they're doing with Nick Robertson. Another one to note that I forgot to note was they signed Yanni Hakanpää to a 2-year deal at $1.5 million. Big, rugged defenseman. It's your typical Brad Tree living Leaf signing. But I think that they're gonna have to move somebody out for cap purposes. And that person might end up being Connor Timmins. I know would only clear $1.1 million of space, but like I think that's the only thing that they really can do because like in my opinion, nobody's gonna take on that Ryan Reeves contract. And they love Reeves. They don't want to get rid of him.
Yeah, Reeves has definitely endeared himself in that locker room as well. Those guys really seem to think a lot about him, and seems to be that way everywhere Revo goes. But yes, obviously bringing in Stolars helps you shore up your goaltending situation. Good that they extended Wall too. Now he seems to be the guy going forward. Um, but yeah, like you said, I mean, as good as interesting as these signings were with OEL and Hakanpää, at the end of the day, it's going to come down to the core four and what they're able to do for this team. I think that this is the first off season where even they really questioned, hey, can we win with these guys?
Yeah.
It's all you always heard the outside noise from like other media outlets, but this is the first time where like it was really in Toronto where they were like, "Whoa, maybe we can't win with these guys. Maybe someone else has got to go." And that was the first time that I can really recall seeing that happen. So I feel like Toronto's just really, like you said, they're gonna make it to the playoffs, but do they have what it takes to get to the finals? I don't know. I still don't believe in them, and I think that
No.
something's gonna have to give at some point.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that like things will get more interesting for them next summer because Tavares is up, which means, he's going to take a massive cut.
Oh yeah.
Like I wouldn't be surprised if his cap hits cut in half, if not more. Um, I think that he's going to take a pay cut just to stay in Toronto. And but like the biggest thing for me that stands out is that Oliver Ekman Larson contract is so bad.
Mhm.
Like so bad. They're going to be
Yeah.
calling for him to be healthy scratch by the beginning of the second year of that deal. He may not even make it through a whole year, and that's a crazy thing for a guy who's already being paid by two other hockey teams not to play for him, you know. So
Yeah.
that's going to be something to watch. We're going to move on to one of the probably the most interesting weeks for a team, for any team in the NHL, was the Capitals. They made all those ads already. Like we already went over Mangiapane, we went over Logan Thompson, all those guys, but they went out and they traded for Jacob Chikrin. They gave up a third round pick and Nick Jensen. Nick Jensen's a good player, but like, you know, it's Jacob Chikrin, man. Like he's a great top 4D, and then they went and signed Matt Roy to a 6-year deal at 5.75. Again, great defenseman. He was awesome in LA. They also signed Brandon Duhaime and Taylor Radish for their bottom six. Um, and that's gonna be a good fourth line for them. It's gonna go Duhaime, Dowd, and Radish. And then somebody will be there as the 13th skater. But I think that if this team gets goaltending, dude, they're gonna be really, really good. And I feel like they're going for broke trying to get Ovechkin this goals chase.
Yeah, definitely. I think yeah, I think that that's what they're really focused on now is just still obviously feeling a competitive team. You know, they haven't made the playoffs the last couple of years. I think that they're trying to at least try to get back there maybe. Oh, actually they made playoffs this year. But anyway, yeah, it's just they want to be have a better team, of course, and I think when you bring in all those depth pieces, that really helps shore things up. Brandon Logan Thompson was good, and then of course Jacob Chikrin. I mean, that's just a great addition for their back end for a team that doesn't have the strongest defensive core. That's going to be good for them now. I think Washington is really making a lot of moves this offseason, and I think that they're really trying to, like you said, push back to the playoff again and not have to squeak in like they did last year. And most of all, are trying to help Ovi out and get him his eternal glory as well.
Yeah, definitely. And something to monitor with them is they're 13.3 over the cap right now, but
Hmm.
that's gonna go down to 4.1 with Nick Backstrom on LTIR. But all this really tells me is they're not gonna make a cap move. In my opinion, I think that they believe that Oshie's gonna have to go LTIR and that his career is effectively over. That's all
Yeah.
that's really telling me. But looking at this team right now, it's Ovechkin, Strome, Tom Wilson. It'll be McMichael, Dubois, Mangiapane, and then Sonny Milano, Hendrix Lapierre, and Alexi Protas. And like I said, it'll be Brandon Duhaime, um, Taylor Radish, and Nick Dowd. Um, again, it's a deep team, and for whatever reason, none of those Hershey guys are coming up this year outside of Hendrix Lapierre. So the three-peat is on apparently in Hershey. I don't know why. I kind of do understand why. The people in Hershey, like, they love it. That's like
Yeah.
their baby out there. Like, they draw like an NHL arena, I swear.
That's like
Um,
that team's been there for almost 100 years, I think, haven't they?
yeah, yeah. But
Yeah.
like, they take such great pride in, like, Washington takes such great pride in their AHL team actually being good. So like all of those guys are going to stay down in Hershey, and the three-peat's going to be on because they keep drafting well. So like there's going to be more reinforcements for the guys that they lost.
Yeah, definitely. It's crazy to think
No,
that you have a team like that. Just they have a dynasty cooking in the minor leagues. That's pretty funny when you think about it.
dude, honestly though, like I like, no joke, dude. I watched almost every single one of their playoff games.
Yeah.
And like it's nuts. It's absolutely insane like what they have going on down there. It's absolutely
Well,
unbelievable.
what's that other team in the East Coast League? The Everglades, or whatever yeah, whatever their name is.
Yeah,
Like, you know what they
the
are.
Florida
They're the green and blue.
Everblades.
Yeah,
Yeah, the
they're kind of the same
Everglades.
way.
They're
They're
the
on the
same
same
way.
straight now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Kind of like
ridiculous.
how same thing with how the Toledo Walleye were in like years ago in the ECHL.
Yeah,
It's
it's
insane. It's
ridiculous.
absolutely
They got
insane.
dynasty. It's crazy.
And then like everybody keeps saying like, oh, Milwaukee should get an NHL team. I'm like, they're not getting an NHL team when the Admirals are pulling like an NH pulling in revenue like it's an NHL franchise.
Yeah, no need.
Yeah,
There's no need.
it's unreal. All right, Chicago. They went and got Connor Bedard, a lot of friends to play with,
Hmm.
because it's obviously like, and like I'm looking at this roster and I can't tell if it's going to be another bad year for them or if they're like gonna be in the mix, because they went and got Tyler Bertuzzi. They got him for 4 years at 5.5 million. That's a bargain for what he brings to the table, in my opinion. Then
Yeah.
Tavo Teravainen's coming back. 3 years, 5.4. That's gonna be a good top six option for them. Pat Maroon's taking the mantle of being like the Corey Perry character signing this year. 1 year, 1.3 million. Good on Pat Maroon, and we all know that Pat Maroon will actually hold up the character end of the bargain this year, unlike Corey Perry. Um, Craig Smith's coming in on a 1 year deal at 1 million, and then they signed Alec Martinez to a 1 year deal for 4 million, and TJ Brody for a 2 year deal at 375. This is an interesting group, man. I think that, oh, and also Laurent Brossoit, 2 years, 3.3. They have they have two decent goalies, you know. They have Taylor Hall coming off. Um, it's going to be like Hall, Bedard, Bertuzzi, and then Teravainen, Dickinson, Mikheyev. And even, dude, even their third line's decent. It's Lucas Reichel, Nick Foligno, and Philip Kurashev. Like, am I crazy for thinking that, like, if this team gets goaltending, they could push?
No, I think that they were like, all right, it's time to go. It's go time. I think these are great signings. Obviously, Tyler Bertuzzi brings so much on both ends of the puck. Teravainen's going to shore up your top six. Everybody seems to love Pat Maroon, and I think he's going to be a great addition to that locker room. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Is Foligno still there in Chicago? Is he still there?
Yeah, he's going to be like playing on their third line.
So Foligno already has a great relationship with Dart. I'm sure Pat Maroon's going to be the same way, if not more.
Yeah.
And then you bring in Martinez and Brody for your defense. Craig Smith's more depth down the middle. Chicago really made a lot of good moves today. I mean, yesterday, excuse me. So I think that, I won't go as far as calling them a playoff team just yet, but they're definitely taking the right steps towards that.
I think they're going to be an interesting team, though, for sure. Although I don't think that they wouldn't benefit from like one more year down in the toilet, but that's just me. But this also reminds me, like, this team is built up, in my opinion, very similar to what the team was built up like when Kane and Taves first started getting good.
Mhm.
You know what I mean?
Oh
Like
yeah,
it has the same type of blueprint, in my opinion.
yeah. They had
Um,
like John, and Marty Havlat, and all those other guys too. All those older pieces that were there to help out the young guys. It's very similar.
Tomas Fleischmann,
Right. Exactly.
we could literally just play like a 45-minute game of Remember That Guy right now. But like we can't do that. We can't
We
do
don't need
that
to go
right
down
now.
that route. We don't need to
No.
go down that route.
Buffalo, Jason Zucker signed to a 1 year deal. Or I think it is 1 year deal. It's a 1 year deal, 5 million. Shout out Jason Zucker, and also shout out Jason Zucker's agent. That dude has to just be a freaking baller because back-to-back years where you're like, okay, he might get like 3.5, like he might be a $3.5 million player on a contender. Nah, he's still getting the same, usually basically the same cap that he's had since he's been in Minnesota. You know, he keeps getting that 5 year or that 5 million to $5.5 million threshold, and that dude just keeps getting a bag. And honestly, he deserves it. Like, what a damn human being that guy was in Pittsburgh. So good for him. Uh, More forward, Sam Lafferty, 2 year deal, 2 million. Good fourth line get for them. Has big shoes to fill after, Zemgus Girgensons had tenure there like he was a wartime president. Um, Nicholas Obey-Kubel, 1 year deal, 1.5 million. Good fourth liner for them. And they also brought back Jacob Bryson on a 1 year deal at 900K. That was a guy they non-tendered on Sunday. And I'm sure you've seen this. It's been a fairly recurring theme. A lot of the non-tender guys have been going back to their teams.
Yeah, it seems like guys are comfortable with where they're at, and they want to try and make it work and stay there. Um, but yeah, going back to Zucker, that is literally the same deal he's had since he signed his first big boy contract in
Yeah,
Minnesota. Like he's
yeah.
somehow able to like I don't know if the agent's just like, hey, 5 million's our number, take it or leave it, or I don't know what magic he's working on the phone, but either way, Jason Zucker's still getting paid for his services, and good for him. Like you said, he's a great player and an even better person. So yeah, credit to him for sure. And as you said, for Lafferty and Aube-Kubel, definitely great guys to fill out that bottom six for Buffalo. Again, probably not going to make a difference as far as trying to get that team back to the postseason. Each of those, I mean, especially with Zucker, could definitely end up getting pushed off at the deadline. So we'll see what
Mhm.
happens. But it's going to be very interesting to see if Buffalo is able to make any progress as opposed to last year. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, definitely. Vancouver now. Um, Vancouver's another team that's going to be pushing heavy in that Western Conference. They went out and signed Jake DeBrusk to a 7-year deal at 5.5 million. They got Danton Heinen on a 2-year deal at 2.25. Kiefer Sherwood, he got 2 years, 1.5. And then Derek Forbort got a 1-year deal at 1.5. And then Vincent Desharnais, 2-year deal, 2 million. Um, this team looks really, really good on paper, like really dangerous on paper. Um, as of right now, they have it projected that Danton Heinen's going to be on the fourth line. You and I both know the type of player Danton Heinen is. That is not going to happen. I would not be shocked if Danton Heinen gets time with Pettersson this year, bumping Pia Suter down to the fourth line. Um, this team is built to win in the playoffs in the Western Conference, dude. I like it's a bunch of physical guys that are able to put up a bunch of points, and the defense looks better with Forbort and Desharnais. Noah Julesen's going to remain their seventh, and then obviously they still have Tucker Pullman, which who knows if he's even going to play, depending on where he's at with his injury. Because I feel like he's been out since he signed that contract. They have about 240,000 left in cap space. Not really sure what they'll do if they need to clear cap out or anything. I think that they're going to be fine because with Forbort or with Pullman on LTIR, they have 2.7, and that's more than enough for them to be able to sign Artur Silovs to a contract to be their backup this year.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Vancouver's taking the steps in the right direction towards being a big dog out west. You know, bringing DeBrusk and Hyen is huge. Obviously, two guys from Boston that are ready to make some noise for Vancouver. I think DeBrusk is going to be a solid top six option. Hyen at the very least will be a solid top nine option. But again, like you said, you can plug him in with your elite players, and he's still going to play just fine. And then you have Forbert to help out with defense. So I think Vancouver's in a great spot, and I'm looking forward to seeing what they do next year.
Definitely. Another Western Conference contender, the Dallas Stars. They signed a 2-year deal with Matt Dumba at 3.75 million AAV. They also got a 2-year deal on Ilya Labushkin at 3.25. And like I said before, they with guys bringing back their non-tenders, Niels Lundqvist got a 1-year deal at 1.25. This team, like they made decent ads. Obviously they kept Matt Duchene, which is good for them. He took 1 year at 3 million. But I don't know. I feel like they could have added better on defense. If it was me, I would not have given all that money to Ilya Labushkin. But you know how Dallas is. They always find a way to make it work. They have $4.6 million left and the only player they have left to sign is Thomas Harley. And it's pretty much do or die time in Dallas, man. Also, another thing I forgot, 3-year deal for Casey DeSmith at 1 million per. That one kind of hurts because like he's a decent backup, and he was in Pittsburgh. That would have been cool if they would have been able to like run it back with him in some way, shape, or form before they went and got Nedeljkovic. But it's do or die time because this is the last year of Jake Ottinger's bridge deal, and he's going to need paid.
Yeah. hmm Absolutely. Yeah. It is. Yeah. Like you said, Dallas is in win now mode, obviously. And I think that they need to make anything that they need to do everything they can possibly to make that happen because aside from your one cup run in 2020, they haven't really made a lot. They've had a hard time trying to push their way through. And I think that, you know, goalies like Jake Oettinger don't grow on trees, and it's going to be very difficult for them to manage that because he's going to get paid.
Yeah.
And whether it happens with him or another team, it's a matter of ifs. But I'm looking forward to seeing what Dallas does this year because somehow I have a feeling they're going to be very busy.
Yeah. Quick hits here. Calgary signed Jake Bean, Anthony Mantha, and Ryan Lomberg. They're guys to fill gaps. That team's going to be awful this year. And Minnesota signed Yakov Trenin to a 4-year deal where he makes like 3.75. You know, Joel Eriksson type player. He's going to be good there. He'll fit right in. They extended Jake Middleton to like a 4-year contract where he's getting paid about 4.5. Good top 4D. His underlying metrics are kind of iffy, but he fits there. Bill Guerin likes him, so good on him for getting a bag. New Jersey is another big team that I feel like we need to just talk about, but I'm going to skip over them for now. 4-year deal for Anthony Duclair in Long Island. This is a good fit for him. I think this is going to be the first time that he's actually going to be able to settle down and stay with an NHL team. It's a 4-year deal at 3.5 million. He's reunited with Patrick Waugh, who was his junior coach when he was a member of the Quebec Remparts. So I think that that's going to be a good fit for both sides.
Yeah, I mean, obviously he's got the coaching experience with Waugh, but I mean, it should be interesting to see how Duclair works out there. I think maybe he'll take a little bit of adjustment for him to get used to Lou Lamoriello's ways, but I'm sure he'll make that adjustment accordingly.
That's true. That's true. Florida signed a bunch of depth guys. They got AJ Greer, Jesper Buckfist, and Thomas Nosek. Um, they're just trying to fill out guys that they lost. You know, they don't have a lot of cap space because they just signed
Reinhardt.
Reinhardt. Yeah, sorry, it was slipping my mind. Um, Ottawa, they signed Mike Amadio, David Perron, and Noah Gregor. I think David Perron's the exact type of veteran that they need there. Um, won a cup in St. Louis, good veteran presence, and I think he's going to help that group get their act together. You have anything to add on to that point?
Perron's a good ad. That's pretty much it. I don't know
Yeah,
what Ottawa really has to contribute. I think they're still going to be a team that's not really in a playoff form just yet. I
I
think
agree.
they still got some work, and yeah, there's not much else to contribute to that one.
I agree. The Devils, they signed Brett Pesce and Brendan Dillon. They also signed Stefan Nason to a 3-year deal at 2.75 million. I like what they did with their bottom six. Paul Cotter and Stefan Nason are both good ads for them. Um, that's and then obviously you're gonna have God, this defense looks so good. It's gonna be Siegenthaler and Dougie Hamilton, Luke Hughes and Brett Pesce, and then Brendan Dillon and Simone Nemec. With Jonathan Kovacevic as your 7. I think that that's going to be a great defense group for them. And I think that the time is now for New Jersey to strike and go on a run because obviously they have
Yeah,
2 good goalies with Jacob Markstrom and Jake Allen. And I think that it's pretty much now or never for them.
yeah, it's time to get the ball rolling in New Jersey. You have the talent to get it done. You definitely have the defensive core. Goaltending seems to be in order. It's time for New Jersey to return to form. It's time to get back to where they were in years past. So
Yeah.
it's time to put the pedal to the floor now.
Yeah. And before we go over to Pittsburgh, I'm just gonna go over the last 2 points that I have to make before we go into Pittsburgh because this is probably going to take up a large chunk of our time. Um, Flyers make one of the best moves of the day, getting Matvey Michkov to be able to make the move over to North America, signing an ELC. That team might be a team to watch this year in the Eastern Conference. They were close last year playing the Torts style of play. I'm anticipating them, getting I'm anticipating them taking a step forward.
Mhm.
You know, they have a good goaltending picture. They have Fedotov now, who I think is going to take a major step forward this year in his first full season in North America. Um, and I think that they're slowly turning back into the Flyers of old.
I can definitely see that happening with them. I think they're making the right steps, and I think that again, they were another fringe team like Washington, Pittsburgh, and Detroit. But I think next year is when they get it done, and yeah, they could definitely be a playoff team next year. They do need a lot of things to go right for them, though.
Yeah. For big contract extension for the Canadians yesterday. I didn't see this coming at all. This was not on my radar at all. 8 years for Uri Slavkovsky, $7.6 million cap hit. Obviously, you see a big number for like that for Slavkovsky, and you're like, oh crap, that's like a big number for that guy. But when you think about where the cap's going and where the cap will potentially be at the end of that contract, that 7.6 million is probably going to look like today's equivalent of like 4.5.
Yeah, easily. And I mean, he's going to be worth it. He took a big jump last year. I think that it's going to pay off for Montreal. Obviously, they think very highly of Slavkovsky, and I think he's going to be a good addition to their core going forward, along with Suzuki and Caulfield. So I'm looking forward to seeing what he brings to the table for them going forward.
Yeah. Now moving on to the Pittsburgh Penguins. I feel like the writing's on the wall here, dude. Like they're they're in that transitional period, you know. I think let's just go through the signings real quick. Matt Grzelcyk, 1 year, 2.75. He was a healthy scratch for 11 of 12 games um in the playoffs for the Bruins. You know, kind of reminds you of what happened with Jack Johnson in Columbus and how that was all heavily reported before, he signed his deal in Pittsburgh. Everybody tried to blame it on John Tortorella, but at the end of the day, it was Jack Johnson problem. Um, and then Anthony Beauvillier, 1 year, 1.25. This is a guy that got traded 3 times in the past calendar year. Um, he was great on Long Island, dude, but like ever since then, the play's jumped off a cliff completely. Um, the Penguins also went out of their way to bring back forward Emil Bemstrom. Not really sure why. Didn't really see much from him. He's just going to be another bottom six guy that kind of goes out there every night and gets cardio. You know, um, their best signing of the day though was Blake Lizotte, 2 years, 1.85. He has great underlying numbers. He's a great penalty killer. Throws a lot of hits. Plays a very physical game, and he will play very well alongside Nola Chari on that fourth line. Um, my biggest takeaway with this is obviously I want to tip my cap to Kyle Dubas on the Beauvillier and Grzelcyk length of contract because if this was Ron Hextall or Jim Rutherford, we all know this would have been a multi-year deal for both of them at more money. Um, I think and this sucks that we're at this point, but like it reminds you a lot of what we see with the Pirates. I mean, he signed both these guys to 1 year deals to try and be reclamation projects that he can flip out for assets at the deadline.
Basically, I mean, that's where we're at now with this team. I mean, I think it's very obvious that regardless of what Dubas says, I mean, I was listening to some of his press conference yesterday, and I don't care if he thinks his team can still contend. It's just, dude, don't blow smoke in my face. We already know that this isn't a contending team. You guys
Yeah.
barely made have made you guys couldn't even make the playoffs the last 2 years. This was after your bit. I mean, last season was a catastrophic failure considering the fact that you went out and got the reigning Norris Trophy winner. I mean, I figured playoffs would be the bare minimum for that
Yeah,
team, and they still couldn't
I
make.
agree.
So the fact that they're doing all these little signs with Grizzly and Beauvillier, I mean, that's just it's not moving the needle for me. Lazat's a good sign. I don't mind him. but then and then okay. And the other thing too, with trading Riley Smith, you think, okay, maybe they do have something planned. You dump him off to New York, you free up some cap space, and you're still going out and signing, these minor leaguers, these 4A guys. It's just it's a hard pill to swallow now because I think maybe Dubas is finally realizing, hey, we can't win with these guys. And it really brings into question, what does the future hold for Sidney Crosby?
Yeah.
Because I mean, as much as Sid says that he wants to finish his career in Pittsburgh, the guy's a competitor. The guy
Yeah.
wants to win.
Yeah.
I
I
mean,
mean,
obviously discussions have begun on an extension, but there's to me, there's no guarantee that he stays here.
yeah.
As great as that would be, it's not a guarantee.
Yeah. I mean, they're at least talking on an extension with both Sid and Marcus Pettersson. Pettersson's obviously a questionable one right now with the way the team looks right now. Because, like, if I'm them, that's probably your most valuable trade asset
Mhm.
is Marcus Pettersson.
He's-
And on top of it, I don't know if I want to be the team that hands out that contract extension.
It would be a
You
tough
know,
one.
it's
Yep,
very, very Vladislav Gavrikovic.
I could
You
see
know,
that.
yeah. Um, but I ultimately believe Sid's going to stay because, in my opinion, what I think is going to happen is we're gonna have. I think he's gonna have 1 year in the toilet, try and get a high pick, draft a forward that can play at the NHL level from day one. That'll be a big help. Braden Yeager, big help.
Hmm. Yes.
You know, the
Do you
guys that
think
they
he
got.
stands a chance of making? Sorry to cut you off there, Dougie. Do you think
You're
he
good.
stands
You're
a
good.
chance of making?
I I think he could, but like at the same time, it's like if it's gonna be like this year, would you want to burn a year of an ELC on him doing
No,
this? Or would you
no.
rather him go back down and, be one of the best players in junior hockey
Yeah,
still?
either that
Um,
or get his development going in Wilkes.
I don't
Either
think
or.
they'll be able to do Wilkes just because of the transfer agreement. They would have to get like a waiver. And
Okay.
the only time in the past like several years that a waiver's been granted was Shane Wright.
Mhm.
So I think it would be hard for that to happen. But as of right now, it is rumored they're going to move out Lars Eller, which I think is a smart move. If we're talking about accruing assets now, you know, I think that the best move right now is to move out Lars Eller because you have a fourth line center in Blake Lizotte. And on top of it, you want to try and get as much value out of Eller as you can right now, knowing that he's going to have amplified value playing all last year as a third line center, as opposed to trying to dump him off at the deadline, spending the entire year playing as a fourth line center or a fourth line left winger. Like that right there, in my
Yeah.
opinion, is the difference between a third round pick and like a conditional fourth or fifth at the trade deadline. So in my
Right.
opinion, I would rather go get the third right now. Um, and it's also rumored that they are looking at signing Vladimir Tarasenko, you know, which you get him for 1 year. It's no secret. Tarasenko wants to go back to Florida, but they don't have enough money to afford him. So
No.
you run this on a handshake agreement that you get to play half the year with Evgeny Malkin. You get to play half the year with your fellow countryman, who most likely is your line mate during international play. You get to go play half the year with Malkin. We'll trade you at the deadline for at 50% retained back to the Panthers. We get a free second round pick out of it. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And on top of that, it's a twofold thing for me because if you do that, you have no choice other than to run Raquel, Crosby, Rust as your top line.
Yes.
And it's no secret, Ricard Raquel puts up his best numbers alongside
When
Sidney
he's with
Crosby.
Sid. Absolutely.
So that gets his numbers back up. That props him back up as a trade asset. And that might give him the ability to be somebody that is an asset that can be moved next summer. You
Definitely.
know,
It's crazy to think that this is the point that we're at here with the old Weenies.
is it disgusting that I'm actually thinking about this like I normally think about the Pirates? Yes.
Yeah,
But
that's the toughest part.
have I been prepared and mentally equipped to do so for years? Yes.
We knew this day would come.
I mean, I ultimately think that they could just have one down year and then go for broke either next year or the year after, last dance style. Because you got to think like you're accruing cap space. You're accruing more cap space. You know, you keep building cap and they might be able to sign a bunch of dudes to a 1 year deal and just go for
Might as well.
it, you know, because
Yep.
the Sid extension is probably going to be a 3 year deal. Who knows how much money it's at? Um, and then you have Malkin for this year and next. And the conversation you have with them at the end of the 25-26 season is, hey, we're going for it one last time. Take 1 year at like 3 million and let's do this shit. You know,
That could be the case.
I
It's gonna be taken on the chin this year, definitely.
yeah, I think that this year is going to be one of those like we sit there, we watch it while we can, but the days of just planning the life out of around when they play are probably over.
Yeah, I'd say so.
You know,
I would.
yeah, I think and the other thing of it is, I think that their probability of potentially going on a run goes up next year or the year after with Bloomquist
Mhm.
if he's as good as they claim he is.
Seems very promising, at least from what I've seen in his highlights and stuff. He seems very promising. So
Yeah, I agree. Because I think the entire
I was wondering like if Jari if they had moved out Jari if they would just take a chance with him and Nedeljkovic. I wasn't sure if they would
I
make
was
that
thinking
happen or
that
not.
I was thinking that was going to be the case too. But I think now the entire mindset is they're going to probably keep Jari for this year and then move him next summer because there's no goalie openings anymore.
Right.
Um, the only potential place that even made sense was Detroit.
Yep.
And Detroit will probably be back in the market for a goalie next summer once Husso's contract expires because the contract, the cap hit upswing between Jari and Billy Husso are not very that much different.
Yeah.
So, you know, and on top of it, I think that, you run it with Jari and Ned because they're on again, off again at two completely different times. So like
That's true.
if you want to tank, you can tank,
Yeah.
you know?
Realistically.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yep.
yeah,
Absolutely.
but the other thing that I find puzzling is Dubas kept saying that like this is a year for young guys to come in and try and take spots, but like there's no spots open.
What spots are you referring to, Kyle?
Like, are you gonna have Braden Yeager play fourth line left wing like they did with Daniel Sprong that 1 year?
That
Like
doesn't need to
that
happen.
that would just be asinine to do. unless like one of the guys from the Gensel trade, like that Vasily Ponomarev, he could potentially be a fourth liner. I mean, because that guy's ceiling to me at least is just Teddy Bluger.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that.
No, totally fine. I mean,
No
he would
shame.
be an
No
ideal
shame
third
in
line
that.
center. Yeah, he'd be an
No shame.
ideal third line center. Yeah. Apparently they're in the market for another cap dump type of trade though. So keep your eyes on that. Um, you know, I know where my eyes are going. I think that, they could get compensated a good bit to take off Evander Kane.
Yeah, I guess we talked about that last night. I mean, he'd fit in well here.
Yeah. I mean, he plays the style they want him to play. So who knows? But all right. Anything else you want to cover? Or are you good?
I think we're all set, man. It's just was a very busy day and we saw a lot of great moves being made and fortunately not too many of them happen with our Pittsburgh team, but it is what it is. We'll just have to write it out as best we can.
Yeah, exactly. All right, guys. Thank you for watching. That was another episode of For Checking TV. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at For Checking TV and subscribe to us on YouTube. Thank you guys and goodbye.